EFL learners. Under the CLIL lessons instructions, English as a foreign language, so-called EFL learners, will be able to learn the target language as well as the subjects. And so they will have additional exposure to the inputs of the target language. Unlike most CLIL lessons in the European countries, in Taiwan, CLIL's lessons are taught mainly by native speakers or non-native speakers, or co-taught by language teachers and subject teachers. As curriculum advisor to some elementary schools, I have a lot of opportunity to attend curricular lesson plans, teaching demonstrations. I find out that in those CLIL lessons in Taiwan, there are insufficient tasks or activities for students to have the so-called push outputs. So they lack the opportunity to practice content-specific language and content knowledge. So in my study, I'm going to explore how elementary school teachers design and implement the so-called push outputs, and in order to find out what kind of teachers' competencies that they have to have in order to design and deliver CLIL lessons. So there are 3 research questions. The first one is, what kind of push output did Taiwanese elementary school teachers design for learners' content-specific language and content? The second one is, how did teachers support learners during their push outputs? The third one is, what challenges or problems did those teachers face when they have to design and implement the so-called push output for CLIL lessons? In my literature review, I will briefly summarize the definitions of push outputs and characteristics of push outputs, and review some empirical studies on push outputs, and provide a literature gap and my conceptual framework for this study. So Swans in 1985 defined the so-called push outputs. The push output is to provide opportunities for contextualized, meaningful use, to test out hypotheses about the target language, and to move the learners from purely semantic analysis of language to a syntactical analysis of it. So there are some definitions, some characteristics of so-called push outputs. The first one is those push outputs should be task-oriented. So learners will be able to be supported to use the content and the language learning. There are 2 types of tasks. The first one is language-oriented. So in language-oriented are designed for students to practice the language. However, in the content parts, then learners also have to focus on comprehensions, questions, and answers. So for content-oriented parts, task activities, learners have to be able to practice and describe the subject knowledge they learn. The second one is those tasks, the so-called push output, should be designed in order to that will support learners' content and language learning. The third one is design of the activity or task will affect as output will affect learners' accuracies in using the target language, particularly for productive skills. The third one is authentic communication and interaction should be provided for learners. So there are some empirical studies use different types of data collection. For example, use assessments as a push output, use of videos. Students have to produce their own videos, and other studies use a lesson plan as an analysis to analyze the teacher's push outputs. Some use quasi-experimental studies. For example, in the first studies, these 2 scholars analyzed 24 post-secondary CLIL lessons on the test and cooperative writing activities. High proficiency levels learners reflect that they can consciously reflect consciously on their own inputs, particularly in the third singular present tense markers in cooperative writing in CLIL. And in the third, another studies by Nichols in 2015 used a discourse analysis of 6 45-minute lessons on physics and chemistry in Chien-Wen secondary school. They found out CLIL teachers will support their learners with opportunities for them to engage in subject-specific language, particularly in the pre and post-test phase, but not during the test part. While chemistry teachers were told learners with the things on the lessons, its association theory and specific terminology during the pre-test and will help them to revise those terms in the post-test phases. The physics teacher will only provide minimal background theories and terminology in pre-test phases. And the theory concept will connect it to help students to be able to put the concept into practice during the post-test phases. So in order to, and based on empirical studies and some theories, in my study, I will propose that in order to help students to have the inputs move to the outputs, the teachers believe that past teaching experience, their past learning experience, as well as school context will help affect the teachers when they design the inputs and outputs. And teachers design and implementation tests have to base on authentic, communicative one, and they have devised different types. And because of learners' proficiency level and where the teacher provides scaffolding will affect learners on their outputs in terms of performance on the contents, knowledge, so-called subject knowledge, and the language they use. So in my study, this is a case study with 8 scores. So I manually collect 3 types of data. The first one is interview. The second one is observation. I want to observe teachers' teaching practice and check the field notes. The third type is I collect document. I ask those teachers whether I can have their lesson plans, their worksheets, teaching aids, or check photos as the documents. So those scores were conducted, were asked because based on my convenience samplings, because I was asked to be the curriculum advisor for these schools. So these are the score informations. Albert scores and Benson score, Jenny score, Edgeworth score, Alden score, Samuel score. Those are pseudonyms. And some of the schools had worked in the schools, the English teacher work with the homeroom teachers. For some school, you can see only English teachers design and implement CLIL lessons. And in some schools, teachers, there's one school, particularly Sarah has PhD in education, and the rest of them have BA, a bachelor's degree or MA, and some had like 20 years of teaching experience. Some only have like 1 year of teaching experience. You can see the teachers, they have devised a great variety of teaching experience. So in the data collection here, one school, the Albert school, focus on the CLIL lessons on life. It's for first graders. So the topics I talk about magnets. Benson school focus on teaching CLILs in arts. So talk on third graders, particularly on colors. So that 3 schools talk for the alternative curriculums. That's for the first grade. They have a subject called alternative curriculums. So they have different topics like health and colors or families. And as Edward School, they talk CLIL lesson in the so-called integrated activities for third graders. They use English to learn to describe personalities and colors. So how did I do the data analysis part? I collected 3 data. I read through all the 3 types of data. I read through all the data. I give them the change codes. And based on the change codes, that come out with the major themes and with the sentence themes. So after I did the analysis parts, I give the data back to this one teacher for one school, ask them to help me to check whether my analysis was accurate. So after they approved, I began to write the findings. So here are the change findings, and I will describe in detail later on. The first type in those push outputs part, for the 6 schools, they have 8 lessons, but only 3 schools include, only teachers include 3, of all the lessons, only 3 lessons had the so-called push outputs. The topic was my place. Describing my classmates, I can do this for you. How did the teacher facilitate learners during their push outputs? Teachers use strategy, particularly you asking for reactions, or they stimulate the use of target language and let students communicate. And for the challenges they face or the problem they face, they did not have clear they did not have sufficient emphasis on CLIL lessons, and most of the lessons and the instructions were more like teacher-centered or lecture-centered rather than learner-centered. And they also face the challenges because of learners' English proficiency levels. Another challenge they face during the lesson implementation is that students were not able to use the target language for the push outputs. And so sometimes that you will not be able to see how the learners use a so-called language learning during the push output. They use Chinese instead. And for the test for outputs, only the one that marked circle will consider as authentic push outputs. Okay, so let me describe some of the phenomena I observed in the classrooms. For example, the first one, talk about describe a personality, describe your classmates. So the teacher say, Linda say, could you use the adjective to describe 3 of your classmates? Who wants to share your writing? Raise your hand. So the first student say, Ethan is nice. The teacher say, yes, Ethan is nice. Is it true or not? So everyone knows who that student is. They will say yes. The second student say, Jack is kind. Okay, the teacher said, Jack is kind, very good, sit down. So did you hear all the different adjectives that you can use to describe your classmates and you? And they say yes. So basically for this push output, at least they learn different adjectives. But those adjectives are positive ones because the teacher didn't want to teach them negative adjectives. So they use positive adjective to describe the personality of their classmates. The second one is my place at Dennis Elementary School. So the teacher said, students in this row, can you stand up, bring your plates to the one who sit down. First, share your plate like I like the different kind of foods. What else on your plate? And students say, okay. And the student said, I have a chicken, a banana, a cake, a carrot, some milk on my plate. What's on your plate? Students say, I have carrots, noodle, a coke, an apple on my plate. And you miss one food because the teacher asked students to share one specific type of food. Students say in Chinese, 牛肉, beef. You get the first letter B, and they say, what is a B and a B? And students say B, and the teacher pronounce B. E, they will say E, and the students say put that together as B, because students forgot how to say the word. Can you say the whole sentence one more time? I have carrots, noodles, cake, beef, and apple on my plate. So students will be able to describe the food on their plates. The third one is in Golden's Elementary Schools. So this is a teaching procedure. Say they are going to teach the shadow. 2 tigers choose. I see shadow on the wall, So this is tiger songs. So the teacher introduced the word shadows, wall, tall, and short. The teacher used hand to form the letters, and so students will be able to see the light, use a flashlight, and students can guess which letter it is. Another one is a magnet. So for me, this one is not really authentic because the teacher tried to teach the contents about how magnets can work, but actually the teacher just teach a picture book and use the animals. So the teacher said, can you come here? You get this. 放平 means hold your balls flat. So the students began to move the magnet on the buttons of the flats on the board. Good night, gorilla. The teacher just used a story, good night, gorilla, to review the story, but actually it has nothing else to do with the magnets. Save the vocabulary words means to hold the vocabulary cards. And the students say bananas and then say 换你 is 你的, 换你 in Chinese is, in English is your turn. So basically for me, this is not considered of authentic push output because learners did not practice the terms that magnets or attracts, but instead they use the animals to review the picture books. Okay, so this is a version that teachers use as a mixed colors in the school. So it's a blue and yellow becomes, and the student had to use crayons or other material to mix the colors. And how about teachers' facilitations? The first one is asking for reactions, and it's the most strategies that teachers use. The second one is stimulate the use of target language, particularly for the first ones. That when students say a sentence, Ethan is nice or kind, and the the teacher will ask, is it true or false? The challenges they face is a teacher lack of competencies and CLIL. For example, the first teacher, Sarah, said, at first, I lack knowledge on CLIL because teacher may not have sufficient training because the school was selected as a school to implement CLIL. That doesn't mean the teachers were ready for the CLIL lessons. I plan to teach vocabulary words on family members such as father or mother. I design games on vocabulary such as matching games. However, I do not think about the contents objectives of my lesson for the live curriculum. Another teacher, Emily, said regards integrating picture books and color, my English lessons on CLIL. I use storytelling and reading strategies such as prediction and comprehension. But I thought that was CLIL, but actually I did not think about the content objectives on the colors of the art lessons. And they forgot to include the oral push outputs for the contents. For example, Juicy played the songs, but I thought my student could understand concepts of the songs about the magnets. But I did not think about that designing hands-on activity for my students. I only thought about until some advisors came and helped, then she know how they should include manipulation of the CLIL lessons. I told her I love your picture books so my student can express love, but I do not think about hands-on activities about how to use oral output for my learners. And learners' English proficiency was another big problem because Molly said my first grade did not haven't learned the alphabets. How will they be able to have the oral output for production and ask them to talk about shadows? Hazel also said, without basic words for colors, how can I design activity for my third grader to describe the artworks around the campus using the color concepts? For example, primary color, secondary color, very hues, warm color, cool colors, the contrasting color, etc. And another challenge is that students did not really use a target language English for the push output. Instead of animal or foods, I should ask my students to say the sentence, the something magnets moved to because it was attracted or pulled by. Another language of learning for learning, when students work in groups, they just turn back to the Chinese because the teacher did not teach the so-called procedural language, as Drew said. When I taught in class, I totally neglect the procedural language of the so-called language for learning. As an EFL teacher, I spend an activity in Chinese. I should use more English for the procedural language. Furthermore, I should teach this expression in class. Mark only said, I thought I only had to use English when I told keywords and sentence pattern. I never thought about teaching classroom English and expect my students to use English during the push output. It was a complete new idea to me. So in terms of the discussion parts for the studies, teachers definitely they need to be equipped with competencies and CLILs. They need to understand the theoretical theories of CLILs. They need to know their roles as a teacher, as a CLIL teachers, not only teach the language, but also the content. They need to have the knowledge about the language. They need to have learn the strategies, how to facilitate the classroom interactions, how they will be able to integrate both language and the contents and lesson plannings, intercultural learning, because in CLIL lesson, there's one part, 1C is called culture, and they have to encourage students to have the output and provide them the feedback. The second one is they need cooperation between content teacher and language teacher should be fostered and encouraged, because sometimes an English teacher design the so-called CLIL lesson, but they did not really reflect the content parts. Another part is that teachers should reflect on their own practice, particularly for the instruction strategies. So they need to tell the observation tools by their co-workers as well as on their own, and they can take notes on their own practice and see how much they should improve in terms of their CLIL instructions. In terms of limitation and the second level, some of the study, because the study was conducted only among 6 schools on 8 CLIL lessons. There was a limited content areas. So for the further studies, I should design, go and collect more data, collect data by CLIL teachers from different school contexts to see whether school context will affect the quality of the context. as well as across different subjects and educational contexts. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. We have about 4 minutes left. So if anyone has any questions, would you be okay in answering questions?
Yes.
Okay. So if anyone has any questions, you can speak through your mic or you can type your question into the chat. Okay, Namiko.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. I have a question about the teachers that you mentioned. I think you had said that they didn't understand CLIL, or like, did they receive, or how long was the training for the teachers for them to kind of understand the concept of CLIL?
To be honest with you, when I was doing this research, those school was assigned to apply for the so-called conducted CLIL projects. So the teachers at that time, they did not really receive the training. So they were invite the guest speaker or professors or experienced teacher to go to their school to do the lesson planning and to teach them about CLIL. But right now, starting from last year, we began to have the summer intensive training programs for the CLIL lessons.
Oh, wonderful. So when the professor visited the schools and then they talked about the lesson plans, the teachers themselves, did they actually see a video of CLIL lessons happening at other schools?
It depends on the school, the advisors, and their curriculum advisor. If the curriculum advisors, the so-called professor of experts, they have the video available, they will be able to see. If not, they will just print their lesson, check out their textbook, and say, okay, what we can do.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? It does not seem like there are any other questions, and we have about 2 minutes left in the presentation. So any final thoughts you have? No? Okay. Then everybody, a round of applause for our presenter. If you don't want to unmute yourself, you can also just use the icon button.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. This Zoom room is going to close in a couple of minutes. So everybody, we have about 6 minutes to go find your next session if you want to go do that now. And again, thank you for your presentation. Sorry, I started recording when like a minute in. I hope that didn't cause you any problems.
No.
Okay, good. All right, then I will close the room.
Thank you.
Okay. And
so we can go to the next section, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.